Hello. Hello and welcome to NICU and You. I'm Belle Stevenson and this is the podcast where we are making sense of the NICU journey, one conversation at a time. Today's episode is part of our ongoing conversations around perinatal mental health, the lived experiences, support, education and shared understanding, and I'm really grateful that you're here with us. And just before we begin, I would just ask that you would like and subscribe as it helps to reach more and support more parents on their NICU journeys. And also, can I just say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Salento and Meritcom in Strabane. Both Salento and Meritcom support NICU and You and have been great supporters of the One Day at a Time project. And we're delighted to have their support for this episode. You can find out more at nicuandyou.co.uk. In today's episode, I am joined by Colleen and her little son, Paddy, who is just 10 months old and very active here and thriving and doing well. Our guest is a young mother whose first pregnancy was marked by severe complications, and the baby was diagnosed with hydrops fetalis, and she developed Mirror syndrome. She faced high-risk medical challenges, but her faith became her lifeline, and against all odds, her baby survived. We're talking about this today, not just because of us, that it matters to us, but to anyone listening who may be walking a similar path. Colleen, thank you so much for being here today.
Bowler Bell.
Okay. So if we can just take it back to where it all began, when you were pregnant with your first baby, when did things start going wrong?
Belle, it was my 20-week scan. Everything was normal up to I went in for my 20-week scan. Me and Noel and the fella that was doing the scan, we could just tell by him something was wrong, before he even said anything. He was scanning for a long time and then he just said he had to go and see one of the consultants because there seemed to be fluid where there shouldn't be fluid.
Okay.
And he left the room and I just remember Noel saying to me, "This isn't good, fluid's not good." So
Chatting away.
um
So they were scanning and the fluid and you knew there was something wrong.
Yeah, so we waited then for an hour and a half to see the consultant and we went back in. It was the longest hour and a half. Me and Noel went out to the car and I just remember sitting praying, ringing my mum. She was away to the chapel and light candles. And whenever we came back in, the consultant confirmed then that the baby had hydrops and that there was fluid like under the skin and around the lungs and places where it shouldn't be, and he just basically told us that this wasn't good and it normally wasn't compatible with life. So he said that we would do more tests to find out what had caused it. He said like hydrops isn't an actual, what's the word? Condition. Like he said it's a symptom for something. So he said something's causing this in the baby. And I remember then Noel just asking, "What is this wee baby?" We were never going to find out, but kind of that day we were more or less told this wee baby's not going to be. So, and he had said it was a wee boy. And we left then and he said the Royal would be in touch with us for more tests. And we went home and the Royal literally got in touch that evening for us to come up the next day to get more testing done. So I just remember going home and it was nearly like a week. And, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. And that's what listening to devastating news kind of makes you think, doesn't it? You overthink things maybe and things go round in your head.
Yeah. And I think that day when we left, we had no real hope. We just kind of were told kind of more or less that, this pregnancy wasn't going to be. And it was just kind of a waiting game.
So at what point then, Colleen, did your hope make a turn? When did that actually hope turn around?
Well, that whole week we were up and down to the Royal a few times. We had a few appointments and we got all tests done, like genetic testing and that with the baby and me and Noel. And we had amniocentesis done and God, I can't even remember what all we'd done that week, but we had a lot of lot going on. And it was then my brother was actually getting married that Friday. This had happened. My 20-week scan was the Monday, and my brother's wedding was the Friday. I was to do bridesmaid, but I couldn't do it.
No.
But we went to the wedding, and on the Saturday then we went and seen our local priest. Noel's brother, Sean, had contacted the priest and asked him if, he just told him our story and that we've basically been given no hope.
Mm-hmm.
And could he see us? So I remember we went to Mass that night. Me and Noel wouldn't have been really holy or
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Randy going to Mass, but we went.
Mom is all right.
And then we seen the priest after Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And he prayed with us, gave us rosary beads, and he gave me this sense of hope whenever I was on with him. And it kind of, Noel after it was like, Colleen, don't be, this is, so he kept remembering me what the doctors were saying, but I kept going back to the priest was saying.
The priest was giving you hope then, was helping you through it. And it was something that you needed at that time.
He was just saying where there's life, there's hope.
Yeah.
That he would pray and, he sent me and Noel away to pray every night. Here he gave us our rosary beads and he said, but you have to pray together. For this to work, you have to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I might think, no, I wasn't going to do that, you know, but he did because he obviously wanted this baby as much as me. We would have prayed every night with our beads, and even if we weren't together, we weren't living together at the time, we would have text one another and said, right, I'm going to do my prayers now. And I feel like that was the first start of hope for us, and it gave me comfort, and it was something to kind of cling on to. It was something we had.
Yeah. So after all these tests and all these things were going on, when did things start moving, or where was the point where this had to move?
So the tests were going on in the background then. We were up and down to the Royal at least twice a week, as well as going to Outlook Albion, but they were more or less telling me, Belle, whenever I was on the fluid was that bad. Basically, they were scanning me, but they weren't. They were kind of expecting for each scan not to find a heartbeat. And they were saying to me, if you go home and you've no movement within a couple of hours or, at least a day, you need to go on and get scanned because it's likely that wee baby has passed with all this fluid. And then maybe another week went past and they said, we might actually start trying to drain the fluid because the wee heartbeat's strong, and all the tests were coming back clear. They could not find an answer, all the testing they were doing for normal reasons why babies develop hydrops was clear. So, one way they were telling us this baby's going to pass, and then the next week we'd go up and they'd say the heartbeat's strong, and me and Noel's head, I didn't know what to tell people I met in the street because I was like, well, I wasn't really out much, but anybody I seen, I was like, I don't really know what's happening with this baby because we didn't know, you know.
Hope and fear mixed together.
Hope and fear, and we just kept going then, and they done a wee procedure on me where they drained the fluid out of Conlon's lungs to see if it would gather again. If it didn't gather again, that was going to be a real positive, that hopefully whatever caused this was kind of resolving. But if it gathered again, then there wouldn't have been much hope. So they done that. They put a big needle in through, and it was amazing what they were able to do. I mean, Noel nearly passed out watching it. But they drained the fluid out of Conlon's lungs and through my belly, and it didn't accumulate. We kept going back and getting checked, and the fluid was still there under his skin and that, but it that was a big positive for us that it wasn't, and it was giving us more hope. And meanwhile, we were I felt like the whole country was praying for us. I was getting prayer cards in the post. People were getting masses said. There was holy things coming, from different religions, and that kept me going in days where I felt like I couldn't even get out of bed.
Yeah, through the darkest days. When did they actually say that you had Murr syndrome then?
So Murr syndrome was a thing they actually told me to watch out for.
Okay. My body's just climbing around the studio here, so he's just tired. There now.
Murr syndrome was something they told me to watch out for, but they said it's highly unlikely. But I remember thinking that day in the Royal, I'm going to get this too in the middle of all this, So at about 28 weeks, I myself felt I started to gather a lot of fluid, and I put on 4.5 stone in 10 days
Yeah.
of pure fluid.
Good.
To the point my eyes were so puffy, my feet fitted in nothing. I ordered like big extra large shoes on Amazon that had, these big straps and all. They wouldn't close. They were for people with really swollen feet,
Yeah.
that. No, and I had been up in my hospital a few times. I'd mentioned Murr syndrome, but it's something Belle that's not really known about. So
Commonly
even the
talked about.
midwives up there were saying to me, well, what is that? And stay off Google, don't be Googling because you'll diagnose yourself. And I was saying, no, something my consultant in Belfast told me to watch for. So I remember ringing up to Belfast and they were asking my blood pressure. I was checking it at home. And that hadn't went up too much at this stage. It was more the fluid. So whenever I went up to Oma, they just scanned me for clots in my legs whenever I went on about the Murr syndrome. And I suppose at that time they didn't really know what it was. That was at 29 weeks. And then I went back up the day of my 30-week scan. No, my 30 week, I was on anti-D for a rhesus negative.
Okay.
So I just happened to be going up to Oma to get my anti-D. And
so that was another wee complication that you had to be
That was
aware
another
of.
wee complication. And I suppose they had said sometimes that can cause the hydrops, if the blood interferes with the baby's blood. But that wasn't the case either with me and Conlon. So that wasn't an answer. But I went up to get my anti-D and my mum had to push me in the wheelchair. I physically couldn't walk.
Goodness.
And I think then the midwives were like, oh my God, Colleen, they said, can you give us a wee urine sample? We check your urine for protein or anything. And I said, I'm not peeing. Like I was at the stage, my organs were just shutting down. I was and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was lying in the bed and I remember Mum saying, somebody has to do something with you tomorrow because she watched me the whole night. She sat up.
It's been so frightening.
She was terrified and I just remember thinking, I don't think I can do this much longer. But the other part of me was, I didn't want to go in and have the baby yet because I kept thinking if I could just hold them for 34 weeks or, the longer you keep them, I thought the better chance this wee man's going to have. So,
an ongoing battle in your head then?
Yeah,
constantly.
100%. And then at the 30-week anti-D appointment, whenever they realised, right, she's not passing urine, her blood pressure's gone up, they sent me to Derry. And then I was transferred straight on to Belfast from there. But I laid it up the road and it was kind of all a blur then, from going up to Belfast. But I was 30 weeks at that point and they said to me, Colleen, you have Murr syndrome. They were able to confirm it then. And they said, if we need to deliver baby now to save you because your organs are shutting down.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like that rare, even up in Belfast, all these doctors were coming into the room and I was like this, I don't know, experiment. Everyone was coming in to look at me because it was something they hadn't seen much and I suppose they were training and learning too.
Yeah. And when you heard those words, what did you think?
I just kept worrying about, I don't know, I didn't panic about myself. I just kept thinking, this is too early for the baby to be born, But they were amazing. Amazing up there. And they gave me 2 days to give Conlon's wee lungs a chance. They gave me a steroid and it had to be given over 48 hours for his wee lungs, the surfactant, isn't it?
Surfactant,
So they done that. So I had went on the Tuesday and then this was the Thursday then that they'd said we would deliver Conlon by a C-section. So that was the next
so a C-section then. So what was your thoughts around that? Did you have any worries or anything about that?
No, I think
Did you know what it was? Did you know what was involved?
Not really, no. I think you go into all that blind.
Yeah.
You hear stories, but it's not teach yourself.
Yeah. And there's so much going on and Colleen, you were completely overwhelmed with fear and all those worries in your head and it was your baby. You were just at the end of the day, you just wanted that baby.
I just wanted him here safe and I didn't, at whatever cost it was to me, but I just remember it was around COVID time, so my mum and dad couldn't come up, or Noel's mum and dad, or any of my friends or that, and my brothers they were all ringing and texting. My phone was just going mad before I even went down for the C-section,
And what would you have wanted at that time? Just what would have helped you right then?
Probably having my mum and dad and you know.
Yeah, the support. Yeah,
Even though Noel was amazing and went
yeah.
above and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him saying to me, Colleen, I'm going to ring your mum and dad, because the doctor came round us just before the C-section. It was the main paediatrician. Well, he was bringing Conlon out, but
Yeah.
he had to be there then
Mm-hmm.
to, see Conlon. And he was brought in for this delivery, and he just said, the midwives were in and they were getting me ready to go down. And I suppose they were doing their job. They were being lovely. They were saying, have you any names? And,
Yeah.
it's a wee boy and all this. And I just remember him coming in and he said, Colleen and Noel, I'm just going to cut the bullshit here. And that was his exact words.
Mm-hmm.
He says, this baby is 30 weeks with hydrops. He says, if it was full term, the baby would have 50% chance of survival.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you do your own maths. And he just got up and walked out. And I just mind Noel looking at me. He said, I need to ring your mum and dad to come up, Colleen, to be there for you after this baby's born. Because at that point, Noel was like, there's going to be no hope here.
The worst.
But this comfort bell just came over me when I was there. I had all these prayer things with my beads, and I had miracle oil I put on every day. My friend got for me. I put up my bump every day, St. Anne's miracle oil. And I was like, do you know what? No, this wee baby's going to be okay. I don't know what came over me, or my faith was just so strong at that point.
Right.
I was the only thing I had. And I just said, don't ring nobody to come up the road. Don't tell anybody what they've just said to us. Let us just go down and see, what happens. And they told me, this wee baby won't cry. He probably won't cry. He's going to be took away for resuscitation. We'll come back and tell you the status, basically, of the baby. But Conlon came out roaring, full set of lungs. And they were able to do, the, what is it? They do the cord clamping and that with me and him, which they didn't think they were going to be able to. Now, he did have to go away. He did get a wee bit of resuscitation. And he was then took on the neonatal, and I obviously didn't see him, but I got pictures with him
at the time when he was born.
Yeah.
So at that time, then when you heard that cry, what was your feeling?
I just started to cry. I just made me relieved to hear him. And oh my God, it was unbelievable.
So all those doubts and worries, like, did you expect, Colleen, that Colin wasn't going to make it? Did you at any point really believe that this baby wasn't going to make it before? Yeah. And then that relief of that wee baby's cry.
It was such a relief to hear him, but I suppose when they took him away, still didn't know,
if it was final, or if it was going to be long lasting.
Yes.
And when they took him away, then I'm presuming there was the separation anxieties and the worries were really high. So how long was it after that then that you got to see Conlon?
I didn't see Conlon then to the next morning. So this was that evening I delivered Conlon around 3 o'clock, and I didn't see him the next morning, maybe 10 or 11. Now Noel was able to go down, but because I had the C-section bell, I was bedbound, and then on top of that I had all this fluid, so I wasn't able to walk anyway with fluid, I was so limited. And then they just said to me, Colleen, by the morrow, they were doing a lot of work, I suppose, in Conlon, a lot of tests, and they just came up and said he was stable, and Noel went down to see him, and
it was hard. And when you walked into neonatal, was that your first time in a neonatal unit?
Yeah.
And what were your feelings when you walked through that door?
I was actually pushed in a wheelchair down by the midwife, and it was just surreal. I can't even explain that feeling. All these wee babies lying in the incubators.
And when you saw Conlon and that incubator, which looks really cold, it's a grey box or a cream box.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe he was mine, that he was here. And this was the next day. And even though we had a lot of tubes and all, I just remember thinking, he's perfect. And I was just so proud of him.
Yeah, and so you should be. I'm proud of yourself for the ordeal that you had come through at that point.
Yeah.
Never mind what was to come after it.
I know.
So then at that point, you weren't allowed to pick him up or anything.
No, we weren't.
How many days was it before you could actually have skin to skin or kangaroo care, any of those things?
Oh, Belle, it must have been because he was still on the ventilator for a few days. He didn't come off it, I think, to the Sunday or Monday. So we got him out then at the start of that week. And every wee milestone like that, being able to change their nappy or lift them out and have skin to skin. No, it's just
And that's all difficult because you're dealing with this box.
Yeah.
There's 2 holes in it. You can't change the
You're
nappy.
putting your wee hand in
You
through
put
the
your
holes.
hands in through the holes.
Uh-huh.
That's right. And all the tubes, as you say, and the wires.
Yeah.
You have to manoeuvre that wee nappy
Yeah.
through all those wires.
And I
And
mind
you're
saying,
thinking,
oh my God, this wee tiny nappy. And the midwives or the nurses and the neonatal nurses were amazing. And they said to me, Colleen, he's in big boy nappies. He's one of our big babies. They said, we have babies that are born at half a pound here. And I suppose he was 5'11", then lost the fluid, so he went down to 4'9". But to me, he was absolutely tiny. But to them, they had seemed so much smaller. They'd seen babies half pound, you know.
But still, it's hard. It's difficult for me as ex-neonatal nurse walking in my first day. I was like the same thing. Like oh my goodness, should I really touch? Should I take them out? Should I do this? Should I do that? So for a parent, first baby, no matter
it's your first baby,
regardless,
so you don't really
it's your first baby, so all of these things are coming at you.
It's all new.
And then you're having to learn to do an nappy through 2 holes. You've limited space. You don't know if you're safe to unplug or to take anything off or what the tubes or anything's for. Did you actually know what the wires and all were for?
The nurses were very good, you know, at explaining what
Hold on, Potty's away for a wee adventure. He's very good. He's getting fed up.
But the nurses was good at explaining, I suppose, what most of the wires was for, but sometimes it might have went over our heads, you know. I knew
Would you have asked a lot, would you?
I think I did. Probably too, with having a nursing background. I felt like wanted to know
know exactly. And would that have helped when you did know what was maybe things were for?
Yeah.
As opposed to sitting completely like oblivious to why the monitor's peeping. It's not always a danger. It could be a loose wire.
Yeah.
It could be just a reminder. It's just come off.
Yeah.
Things like that, and the wee heart monitors.
That noise, them bleeping, like I feel like I can still hear that to this day, you know.
And a lot of people would feel traumatized from that constant bleeps of those monitors. That's one thing that they would remember.
Yeah.
Constantly, even nowadays, like years later.
Yeah. I feel like it'll always be in your head, you know.
So then how long was Colin in neonatal then?
So he spent 2 weeks in the Royal in Belfast and then a further 8 weeks in Gallen. He was transferred there whenever he, you know, came out of ICU. And he was transferred down whenever he had obviously got a bit more stable and things were going good. And so we were transferred to Derry. And we had actually moved up to Belfast. My cousin had given us her apartment, so we were only living 3 or 4 minutes from the Royal. So whenever he moved to Derry, in a way he was closer to home, but it was a longer distance for us then, you know, when you were leaving him at night. And that was probably the hardest part, leaving him. And there, I mean, the first day I was discharged from the hospital, leaving him in the Royal and going home to Riley's apartment, and we were so grateful for there. But I just broke down. I remember my mum and dad and brothers and auntie and them were there, and Noel was like, Colin, what's wrong? He's only over the road. We're going back. And, you know, he was probably trying to make light tiredness of it for me, but I just couldn't believe that I had left. I felt so guilty to leave.
That separation.
It was unreal.
And the guilt comes from why were you feeling guilty? Explain that guilt, because you weren't guilty of anything. You were doing your best.
Yeah.
And you were doing incredible, actually, in the most awful set of circumstances. So you have nothing to be guilty about, but that guilt does embroil people. So whenever Colin then was moved from the Royal, transferred by ambulance to Derry then, was there a wee bit of a rough...
I have to say that's something probably that was our most traumatic experience through the neonatal, and something I'll never forget, and it still annoys me to this day. And I suppose we should have went back and probably put on a complaint on that at the time, but our focus was on Conan at that time and him getting better, and I didn't go back. But I would hate to think that would happen another baby now, do you know?
Yes.
The day Conan was being transferred, I actually remember, like, obviously the Royal is so busy and they're the regional unit and they have the sickest babies, so they want to clear the beds when they can, and I completely understood that. And we obviously wanted Conlon to start moving down the road because we stay closer to home. But that day there was, I think, Conlon and 2 other babies in the unit, so it was very quiet anyway. So I remember the nurse on kept taking Conlon off the oxygen and saying, we'll see how he does, because the ambulance, you know, is it like a bumblebee ambulance or something like that, has to travel with the oxygen. And I think they come from Dublin, if I'm right. They weren't available that day to move Conlon. It would be the following day.
Okay.
But because there was no demand on the bed, I was like, well, that's fine. We can wait, you know, because he's obviously going to have to travel with oxygen. The nurse in charge that day kept taking the oxygen off Conlon, and when we were sitting there, he would last, say, maybe 5-6 minutes, and then his bleep, it was bleeping and bleeping. He was dropping way down, and they would pop him back on it.
So they're trying to titrate it.
They were trying
to try him off it to see how he would do, and that is how they come off.
And that's how they come off. And he was nearing that stage, but he wasn't there yet. He was only doing maybe 5 minutes, and he was needing to go back on because he was dropping down to 90, 80s. You know,
this was the light flow.
Yeah. This was the low flow. Yeah. So he was doing really well, but we knew now he's going to be another few days here yet on this oxygen. But so we left, just normal routine. We had got on to go get lunch and then come back again. We were just spending our hours on neonatal. And whenever we came back, or before we even got back, we got a phone call to say Conlon's on his way down the road. And I was a wee bit confused because I thought the ambulance wasn't available tomorrow, you know, that had all the medical equipment they needed. But no, he was transferred via an ambulance and told that he was no longer needing oxygen.
Right.
So Conlon travelled the whole road from Belfast to Derry with no oxygen. That's a long road, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whenever he got to Derry, I wasn't there. We then were quickly packing up our stuff and moving, I suppose, whatever we had in Belfast down to Derry. And I was in a panic thinking he's in that ambulance. And I had a woman had given me a wee blue cross that I still have to this day, and I kept it in Conlon's incubator, and I kept panicking. No, are they taking that blue cross with them? Have they got it? And I said, he can't travel without it, because I believed it was helping Conlon, you know, every day get better too.
Yeah.
We were just up to Hido, got into Derry, and the nurses said, Colleen, we're so sorry, but he has come here so distressed, and we've had to put him back on oxygen. And I was like, sure, he is on oxygen. You know, and they said, Colleen, it was handed over to us. This wee baby came off the oxygen, wasn't needing it no more, wasn't a requirement. Read out the handover to me that they got from Belfast, because they obviously wanted to show it wasn't. And he travelled the whole way from. They said he was gasping by the time they got on through their doors, and they had to put him on. So he actually went backwards then in terms of his oxygen requirements. He needed higher oxygen. He spent the whole 8 weeks, and he only came off it about a few days before we were taking him home. He was on micro low flow. He clung on to like 0.01, is it? Which was very little, but he was needing that, and I think it's because he had that trauma of, you know, that happened to him.
Yeah.
And it set him back.
Yeah.
Definitely did.
And then at what point then he clung on to that? So did it take another 3 weeks or something for him to come off that?
It took 8 weeks.
Another 8 weeks on top of that?
So he was 2 weeks in Derry, and then he had transferred down, and he was on it the full 8 weeks. He was in Derry.
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Right. And all that time.
And it was the microloaf. And they were saying to me, Colleen, this is really nothing. But the minute you took him off it, he was so sensitive to it. He needed it.
Yeah. And it literally is a whiff. You wouldn't even feel it.
Yeah.
You know,
you wouldn't feel it with your hand.
It just shows you.
But he clung to it, and I thought for somebody that was nearly off the oxygen before they left Belfast to then still be needing this.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I just thought it didn't help him. And it was traumatic. And even the way the nurses described the state he came into them in, because he had travelled that journey.
And you've held that to this day, and that affects you still.
Absolutely.
All the things it does. So at what point then did he get home?
Colin got home the day after his due date. So he was born the 19th of May, and he was due on the 26th of July. And he got home the 27th of July. So that was a big day. It was amazing.
Big day celebration.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And how would you say then, looking back at the whole experience now, Colleen, and I know it's something you haven't talked very much about, But how would you say it has shaped you as a mother and as a person?
I suppose it gave me a whole insight into the neonatal side of nursing and how incredible the nurses and doctors are in there, how strong the parents and families are. Like, I suppose we were one of the lucky ones, got to bring our baby home. There's not people like that. So,
Not forgetting how incredible you've been. You know both, because it has been an incredible journey. You know, and you've done amazing. And what age is Colin now?
Colin is now, he'll be 4 now in May.
And tell us what he's at.
He is. He's flying about. He's just a wee miracle, and everybody just loves him.
Yeah.
He's in the lorries and fireman and just typical wee boy.
Everything. Brilliant. So one thing that really stands out today, Colleen, from our conversation is that survival can be physical and emotional, and faith, resilience and hope has carried you through an extremely uncertain journey.
Yeah.
So it's reminding us that we don't have to do these things alone.
Absolutely.
There's support, compassion and presence really matter deeply when fear feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's about taking a breath, a moment, and one day at a time.
Absolutely, Belle.
So if this episode has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to NICU and You wherever you listen to podcasts. Leaving a review or sharing the episode really helps these conversations reach the people who need them most. And you'll also find links in the show notes as well if you'd like more support or information. Just one final question, Colleen, then. Yeah. So what would you say to a mother now, parents even in NICU, going through the same similar situation as you went through? What would your own words from your heart be to them right now?
I would just say take one day at a time, and just, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but you just have to take the good with the bad and keep going, keep showing up for the baby. And there is support out there, and even reaching out and getting help and talking to people, I suppose, something I didn't really do.
And who would have been your go-to, your biggest support during all of that journey? What would you say was your biggest go-to to get you through the whole thing?
Definitely my faith and prayers.
Faith and prayers.
Yeah.
Okay. So a final thank you to Colleen and Polly, who's been very good and very patient with us, and to Salento and Meritcom for supporting this episode and helping make these conversations possible. And to everyone listening today, thank you for trusting us with your time and your story. Whatever stage you're at, remember, you don't have to do this alone. It is a journey, and we take it one day at a time. This has been NICU and You with Belle Stevenson. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the NICU and You podcast with your host, Belle Stevenson, supported by Salento and Meritcom, recorded at and produced by 9874 Creative.